Haha, guess I got a new laptop today. And no, I didn't steal it because I don't do that. Like, because people go crazy when they do that. That's how I know they stole it. They cray. The thing is, like, there's this thing called internalized racism, and it's something that a lot of people from a different ethnic background suffer from. And it's something that a lot of people who aren't European experience, and the Europeans experience something similar to it, and it's called like I think it has a lot to do with ethnicity, because there's still racism in Europe, and you think that all white people like each other. They don't. It just seems like that, honestly. But sometimes, like, they go through this thing called, like, this class thing, like, it's the distribution of wealth, and they have that in other countries, but not to the extent that they have, like, with white people. It's kind of like when somebody's poor, there's a reason why they're poor in Europe, right? And they have a lot of, like, they expect certain things from people of that income level. That's why it was hard for a lot of people who were European to actually move up a class, right? Like, just social climbing in general. That's not kind of how things are like in East Asia, where it's not divided by wealth per se. Like, it's not really materialistic wealth that they're so concerned about. But yeah, it's like, okay, if there was a poor person in Europe, okay, that means that their family's poor, and they're poor because there's something wrong with them. But they can still work, so that's why they get to live there and do some whatever stuff, where the wealthy people are very beautiful and there's nothing wrong with them. Right, that's what they're saying. I actually don't know what it's like. From my experience, the only actual difference is that there's people who have problems, who are chronically ill in their family, and people who don't have that kind of problem. In East Asia, there's nothing really like that. Right, like, kind of like, you know how, like, dogs have some genetic hip problems, or, like, they're prone to obesity or something like that? That's not really like that in Asia, like, with the East Asians. But with the West Asians, they have something like that in their family. And those people are typically poorer than the people who don't have those kind of problems. But, like, you can't, like, just divide yourself amongst, like, that. Like, you still gotta kind of mix the genes a little bit, but you're risking yourself at getting those problems. Or whatever. That's what they're saying, anyway. I think, I'm like, read it. No, like, there's a lot of things wrong with them, honestly. I think it's because they're Christian. There's something wrong with Christianity, just in general. But internalized racism is, like, the closest thing I can make an analogy to it is, like, internalized poverty hater. You know what I mean? Like, somebody who hates themselves for being poor and always sides with the rich people even though they're poor, despite the fact that they're never going to be a part of that wealth group. That's what that's like. I think that's the closest thing that's like that in the Europes. In Asia, again, it's not really like that. Like, there's always possibility for people to achieve a higher level of income, right? And it's not so fixed and static, whereas in Europe, it is very fixed and static. It's very hard to move away from that, right? Which is why it's causing so much problems when they immigrate. And also, typically, an area with a lot of immigrants are typically considered to be the poor areas. There's a lot of people who have problems, who have family issues, or, like, they're typically adopted kids or kids without two parents who are functioning, or they've been fostered, or, like, they go from home to home, or, like, I know there's a bias on that too, but other than that, like, typically not the best people, lower class people to higher class who've committed a grave sin and they can't actually function in the higher class anymore, or they've been rejected from the higher class. The people who end up there, they're also part of that group. Like, the immigrant population, so there's a lot of people from different countries in that area, is typically the poor area. Right, that's in every country. In a country where there's a city where there's a lot of multiculturalism, it means it's a very poor area. They can't, like, most wealthy people, they live and work within their own area, and they know people in that area. Not that they don't like immigrants or something like that, but usually the bias is that it's a bad sign when people have to immigrate, because that means there's either something wrong with their country, the way it's governed, or there's something wrong with you. There's really no reason for you to have immigrated outside of your country unless you were accepted for some other reason, such as work. So there's a job space opening for you there. But the same type of positions already been filled in your country, which means you know how to speak both languages, which means you should know or have or been related to a family member from one of them is related to the country people there or something like that. Like, it just, if it's not that, then it's kind of a bad sign, right? Again, this is what a lot of people expect with the lower income level, like the poorer class. Not everybody divides it by income. Some people divide it by ethnicity. Some people divide it by experience. Some people do, it does correlate with income. But yeah, internalized racism is something that a lot of people have a hard time accepting. And it's not really something that I studied in psychology, but they do go through the defense mechanism, the repression, the regression. There's the denial, there's a projection. So it's internalized racism is when they're in a predominantly poor European area. So they live and work with poor Europeans, okay? They're very poor. Those people typically are out of work very quickly. And a lot of other functioning Europeans or like racialized Europeans, they don't actually talk to these people. They don't like putting up with them, and they're already a headache. Because a lot of them actually do have mental health problems, which they try to cover up through that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's what that is. Like, when people have like racial issues and they can't recognize it. Which is like, you know, the poor white people, they don't like people from other race, but the truth is they don't really like themselves because they're heavily discriminated against within their own subgroup, right? Like, other wealthy, functioning, well-known Europeans don't like them because they're poor and their family has problems and there was inbreeding in the line somewhere, or they're not very smart, like, just they haven't inherited very good genes for whatever reason, so they don't like them because they do some weird stuff or they've done some weird stuff. And that's where, like, oh, we don't really want to talk to you, but yeah, you can go over there or whatever. And that kind of like resentment and bitterness, actually just, they don't know where to put it, so they take it out on other people. And then they like start targeting groups because they think it's a race thing, right? They're like, oh, there's no way there's something wrong with me or my group that I so desire to be a part of, right? And it's kind of their way. Like, I don't know why they respond this way. This is the thing that I don't understand. If somebody did that to me, I would find some other people to accept me. But they don't do that because they still hold on to this belief that their group is superior to other groups, right? And there's nothing wrong with them. It's just the other people who are giving them problems, which is why they're like that. If those people went away, then they'd accept me one day. That's what they're kind of doing. Like, that's what they're working towards. Again, they don't know that they'll never be accepted within that subgroup because has nothing to do with the race or their income level or whatever. It has something to do with who they are as a person, right? And that's the thing that they can't accept, that not so people from their own, what they consider to be their group, don't accept them, right? They have a hard time understanding that that's not really their group, but they think so because they're from the same country and they're from the same ethnicity. With internalized racism, especially if you have like the poor workers from outside the country work in an area where there's a predominant amount of white poor Europeans working there, they start to think that there's something wrong with them and they deserve to be in a lower position just like them. It seems pro-social, but it's very anti-social. And that's when they start accepting mistreatment as normal and they don't recognize that they're being discriminated against for no reason. Right? And it's the way they're going about it. The reason why it's internalized racism is because that's the only way they can actually kind of be a part of their in-group. Like, that's the only way they'll accept them or even talk to them or like make them feel like they're a part of something. Right? They don't know that they're not actually part of a group. Like, these racist Europeans, they're not from an authority position. They're not very important, and they're societal rejects, right? They kind of group together, huddled together in an area called the slums, right? That happens in every country, and like they kind of like just congregate with each other, but they don't really like each other either. right? And then you gotta work with amongst those people, and it's kind of hard to get along with them, and then you start accepting their treatment because you think you deserve to be treated that way because there's something innately wrong with you, right? Or there's something wrong with your race, and then you start mistreating your race, right? That happens quite frequently with people who work with and attempt to get along and befriend white people and think that they know what they're doing. So they see these people as people in authority. They think, oh, white people know everything. But that's supposed to be the joke, right? It's a joke. They don't know shit. They're stupid. Which is why they've been doing the whole European Union thing, because they want to huddle together in a group because there's power in numbers, right? That's the thing. It's like, okay, they're not very smart, but they can get skilled, and some of them are very talented. And not all of them are racist. It's a very, very small percentage of the population that are very wealthy that are not racist. The very small percentage. It's actually the opposite in the other parts of the globe, where there's a very small percentage where they're racist and stupid and can't get along with anyone. And majority of them are fine. With the Europeans, it's the opposite. Because that's how they're generating, like, that's how they're distributing wealth and economy and property, right? Because they're saying most of them are kind of shitty, and there's like the really good top ones at the floating at the top, kind of like oil and water or whatever. But yeah, that's what this is actually consistent towards every racial background group, and they don't even notice it, because if you're around all these people and there's other races who are going along with them or they can't recognize it themselves, then they start thinking it's normal, because that's how it's pro-social, where they think that going along with the majority of the group seems like it's the more social thing to do, and going against the group is antisocial. But it seems like it's pro-social, but it's actually very damaging to the entire group, right? Because it's like, not only are you disrespecting yourself and other people's from the group member that you belong to, but you are also actively hindering their progress by saying they're right about it when it's just a joke, right? You're supposed to be like, yeah, clearly you're right, you idiot. Like, that kind of joke, that's supposed to be the joke of it, but they took it very seriously. I mean, the wealthy ones, yeah, that's how they talk to them. They're like, yeah, you're right, you fucking idiot. Because, they're stupid. Like, that's kind of like, I mean, this is why it's a struggle, right, to get along with them, because they're so racist. But honestly, I don't consider it personally to be racism. That's how they view things. This is a pattern of perception that they go by, right? This is how they see things. But in all honesty, it's just stupidity and lack of social skills. And the unfortunate part of it is that some people can't build social skills. They can't. And honestly, some people, just to get by, because they don't want to face what I'm facing currently, which is chronic homelessness and unemployment, because for whatever reason, these white people are in charge now, they actually start going along with what they say so they can get the pennies off of it, right? Like, they're giving them pennies and like just the end bits of whatever that they live off of, and trust me, it's affecting them even worse. If you've seen them, they look awful. They're overweight, they have serious drug addictions, and they have mental health problems. That's the problem. Like, they think they're separate human beings, but that affects them just as it would affect anyone, right? But that's what internalized racism is, and I see it with black people too. But I call them Uncle Ruckuses. I saw it on a TV show. It's called The Boondocks, and Uncle Ruckus is his character, and like they talk about the slave trade and slave owning back in the USA. I actually don't know anything about that. Never was taught that in school. I don't know how accurate that is. But there's this white old, I mean, not white old man. This is a white-haired black man, very old, very ugly, and very portly. He's very fat. And he actually like always talks about how great the white man is. If it wasn't for the white man, we wouldn't be where we are at. They're the greatest. You need to be able to pray to them and blah 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 blah. Yeah, that's Uncle Ruckus. And it was supposed to be a joke, but he's serious about it. And they go against like the whole civil rights movement of the USA, where without the whole movement, they wouldn't even be able to hold property or have a job or I don't know, the whole Rosa Parks thing where they can't even sit in the bus anymore, like that kind of stuff. But he's like saying that that's the wrong way to go about it, and they should have been treated as second-class citizens, and the white people should be on top. But I think, again, that's supposed to be the joke, right? I think that was a Native American joke that a lot of people didn't understand. But yeah, that was a joke. But yeah, there's like that in black people with the East Asians, the Chinese people who are trying to make money off of it, and they want to do better than other East Asian people, and they actively support their behavior just so they can get like half of what they're making. But it's like, okay, these guys aren't actually making that much money, you know that, right? And I have no idea why they put in like such high authority positions. That's the thing, like if you actually sit down and talk to them, I don't think they're very wealthy. And this is the thing that I've actually started to recognize, is that wealth actually is considered the same in every country, across cultures. That signifier of wealth, what people call wealthy people, it doesn't change, and it has nothing to do with the money that they make or the things that they own. I mean, there's some correlation to it, but it has nothing to do with that in and of itself. So that's what I have noticed. But yeah, I just didn't like. I don't know. I don't know what that was. Like honestly, I'm like, I've seen people like, to me it didn't make sense. I'm like, how do you not know what racism is? And how do you not know that like people are mistreating you for no reason? Literally, they're saying that kind of stuff to you because that's kind of how they feel about themselves, but they're saying it to you because they're trying to blame you for something that you have nothing to do with, which is the race, your racial background. Honestly, like, you can't choose what race you are. It's fucked up. Like, I can't, as a baby, as a fetus, like, oh, let me just have a pick of which race I am. I can't. And it's because it doesn't matter. Like, physically, yeah, there's a variation in genetics, but the expression of personality and inheritance and all that kind of stuff, it actually doesn't change based on a person's appearance. With dogs, it does. Like, with dogs, that's how people assess a breed's, not a person, a breed's personality and how healthy they are and if it's purebred or not. And it correlates to their coat and their physical stature and their response to stimuli. Right? That's actually, it's fixed in dogs and it's very simple. But human genetic material isn't as simple as dog genetic material. But yeah. Oh, also, I found out a neat trick to the whole Maslow, I think, or is it Haslow? I think it's Harlow. Harlow's monkey experiment is that it's kind of the opposite with humans, where if you actually adopted or had to foster a kid and it's separated from its mother, right, like the infant, actually providing it with less affection is more beneficial for the infant than if you were to actually try to make the infant one of your own. They'll respond poorly to that. And it's not because the infant has a mother. And it's not because it doesn't want to be adopted. It's just because of the fact that you're not its mother. And that's, I think, something innate, except for with dogs. Like, you can adopt the dog and it can kind of be like your family member. Like, it recognizes its owner with dogs. Kind of like that. Like, once it has an owner, it knows that's my owner. Right? Like, not really like, I don't know how to label yeah, I think that's what that is. But with babies, like human babies, when they, like, unlike monkeys, you know, monkeys actually need to be with their mother and have to be reared by their mother, otherwise they have serious problems. With human infants, they don't need to be reared with their mothers if they want to be functional. They can actually be reared by another parent, but that parent can't be a parent. It's like a figurehead, right? Like, it's kind of like they're there to provide supplies and things for you, but that's about it. Like, you can't actually develop a more closer relationship than that. With people who were raised with their mothers, they will have developed some sort of special infant-mother bond, I think, I don't know what that's like, but with adopted kids or foster kids, they actually can't be like that. I think that's the biggest problem that a lot of people face when they are like, I can see that that was a struggle for my foster mom when she couldn't understand why her adoption process was going so poorly. And it wasn't because of like I think they told her not to do that. That's the thing. I think the adoption agency told her, look, don't do it this way. If you do it, then the infant's not gonna bond to you. But if you do it that way, then the infant will bond to you. But it's kind of like, I don't know why she did it that way. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I think, I'm not really sure what it is, but with infants, the less you provide, like not less provide, like less you emotionally support the infant and less socially supportive you are with the infant, and you kind of let the infant make its own decisions, the more likely they are to try to be your child, so to speak. So adopted kids are like, they take after, or like they mimic, actually. That's all they do. They mimic their caregiver. But they'll never be like they've done so much studies on adoptions, and it always ends up with the adopted child being always closer to the biological parents than they ever will be to their adopted parents. That never has changed. That's the thing, like, they will never be like their biological parents. The kid grows up to be exactly like they will always grow up to be like their biological parents. They will never grow up to be like their adopted parents. That's just how, I mean, because it's not a dog. I mean, if you have a dog, your dog's gonna take after you a lot of times. But with adopted kids, they take after their biological parents. They don't take after their adopted parents. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely mimicry there. Like, you don't really notice that, like, it's the way they see that person, I guess. But I don't think that's right either. It's kind of like having a live-in nanny, honestly. That's what that is. If that's what you're supposed to be doing, like, you're just basically a live-in nanny for this person. You're not really supposed to be close to the baby, and even if you are, like, they were not gonna respond to you the way you expect your actual child to respond to you, because it's not your child. That's the thing, and I don't really know why they say they'll never be like a lot of the behaviors are learned, even as infants, so it might be harder to detect it, but you'll always notice that there's not something, they're not really like them, right? Like, they do a lot to make sure that the adopted kids look like their adopted parents, right? And they're so close to them and they're so responsive to them that you think that it's their real kids, but it's actually, I think the biggest difference is that you can't actually, like, say that they're very close. Like, it's, the relationship is a little odd. Like, something doesn't really seem right. As in, like, why is that child, like, he seems like, honestly, it seems like you, like, that's a job, is not really a relationship or something. And I've noticed it consistently. Adopted kids have a harder time fitting in, always. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if that's a consistent thing. I don't know if there's an error with the adoptive caregivers, because honestly, there's very few people willing to adopt kids, and they're not the best people. That's like another challenge a lot of people face, and then there's a whole kidnapping too. I mean, it technically is kidnapping, honestly. I mean, I don't know why anybody would willingly give up their child. This is kind of odd to me. I think there's something wrong with that. I don't think anyone would be willingly giving up their kid. That's what I think. I think no one is willing to give up their kid. But with adoption agencies, they say that they're willing to give up their kids. I met one woman. I met two kids who were adopted. I didn't know that they were adopted. I just knew that they didn't really look like their families. And I'm like, I guess that's your kid, sure. But I met their actual parents, and it didn't really seem like they wanted to give them up for adoption. That's the thing. It's just I met their adopted, like one of them. I'm like, you look exactly like your son. Like there's no mistaking that's your son. And the other woman is like, you look exactly like your daughter. Like it was hard to tell until she actually started talking to me. And the expression was exactly the same, and the way she spoke was exactly the same. And I knew that she was taken away and raised by a different woman since she was a kid. And same with the other kid, the boy was raised by different parents. And I think it's not, they call it adoption, but I think it's very rare when this adoption process is possible. As in, it's very rare that a child is neglected and given up by their parents willingly because the parents themselves know that they can't take care of the kid for whatever reason, or they won't be able to take care of the kids during the critical periods of development. Otherwise, this child's not going to have a good chance at life. Right? That's when they're supposed to give it up for adoption, saying like, there's no way currently the situation, somebody needs to be able to take care of this kid and I can't do it myself. Like realistically speaking, if I did it, this kid will definitely die within the month or the year, 100%. But again, at that point, I'm like, wouldn't you just let the kid die and then get a different kid and make a different kid? That's what I would be thinking. Like, I don't... But yeah, I don't think they gave them up for adoption. So I met this guy and I was like, he was living... Both of them, I think, were homeless. That's the thing, and I'm like, how are you both homeless? And for the guy that I met, I was like, I don't know who the mother is, but like, I have no idea why you're at the homeless shelter. I'm not sure I don't think he was homeless, but I don't know why you even gave that kid up for adoption. His personality is exactly like yours. That's so weird. And it doesn't really, like, he seemed really sad about something, and I think it's because somebody took away his kid. And I'm like, yeah, that would make anybody sad, but I'm like, why did you give the kid up for adoption? Like, it doesn't really look like he wasn't able to take care of his kid. And in the case that he doesn't have enough money, there's government subsidies available for him to be able to take care of the kid. Right? I mean, yeah, I've read repeatedly that courts are against men raising kids by themselves, and I don't know why that is. But they are. I mean, it's always in favor of women raising the child by herself than men raising the child by themselves. And I don't know why. But yeah, there was another woman whose kid I've met before, and she told me that there was no way I would have known what she's done to me, because her kid really fucked up. And she's like, yeah, I know she would have done this because I know what I'm like, and you wouldn't have known what she was involved in because there's no way, you don't actually know her to that extent. You wouldn't have expected her to be like this, but I know what that's like. And I'm like, why? It's like, I was kind of like that too. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, but I actually didn't go that far. Like, I've had those thoughts, but I never actually, like, I stopped myself before anything happened. And I was like, that's weird. And she's like, yeah, that's just kind of how I'm like, or something. And I'm like, and she's the one who told me that, like, living at the shelters is actually like being on meth. Yeah, and I was like, why is that? And she's like, it's because, okay, the guy got really scary. Anyway, I got a really scary image and I'm like really spooked out. And I think that's why person barks at me sometimes. But she told me that yeah, anyway, she actually told me this is also, before I go further, I didn't really know the extent what soul meant, but a lot of people, I know that there's this thing of selling your soul. And I've seen people whose souls just leave their body. and like it's just when they sell their souls or like they lose their soul somehow and there's no way to retrieve it or something like that. Like there's a weird reason why the word exists. It's called soul. Otherwise, if it didn't exist, they wouldn't have a word for it. But I was wondering, she looked very upset too, but she looked like she knew me, but she's like, it's because I know my daughter and it's because she's my daughter. She's not like me, but that's my daughter, and I get that's you were trying to be friends with her and you did the right thing, but it doesn't seem like that, does it? And I'm like, no, it really doesn't. And she's like, you know what, there's no way you would have known anything about her or anything like that. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, it's just, that's kind of why I gave her up for adoption, because I didn't want to be like that when I have a kid and do something to her, to hurt her, or like to do something where they would have put me in jail and taken her away from me indefinitely. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. If she's your kid, then she's not gonna hate you or reject you, or like, she's like, there's other people involved, there's neighbors and there's the government, and they may not agree all the time about what I'm doing, especially since it's my kid, and there's people who abuse their kids all the time. And I was like, how come they don't have their kids taken away? And they're like, sometimes they just hide it. There's no evidence for their abuse. There's really nothing for them to be able to say that this kid's being abused. Or sometimes the kids hide it because they don't want it to be taken away and live on the streets. That's why. Because they think it's better to have a place to stay and some food to eat and put up with that abuse than actually being on the street and trying to find their own life and their own way. And I'm like, but isn't that what you did to her? And she's like, yeah, but I don't know why I did that. This is something I did. And I was like, okay. I don't know. She's like, she kind of freaked me out a little. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, why did you give your kid up for adoption? And she's like, I didn't. And I'm like, what? And she's like, why are you living in a homeless shelter? It's like, is it because you didn't have enough money to have a kid and that's why you gave her up for adoption, because you're hoping that she'll end up with a wealthy family and at the very least she'll be financially taken care of? Because she just ended up at a co-op housing. And I think with the other guy, he actually ended up with a bunch of fucking crack addicts. Like, his friends are shit, and I don't think his family gives a shit about him. Yeah, it doesn't really look like he even has friends at all. And he looks really dumb, like he's just accepting the fact that everyone just hates him all the time. And I'm just like, I don't understand why. Like, I think they would have been better off with you. At the very least, they'll have a parent and know what that's like to like have somebody love them. Like, no one loves them. In fact, most people just hate them, or the ones that don't hate them ignore them. And they're like, I don't think they actually put them up for adoption. I think that's what they were trying to say. I'm like, how did they even get the kid out of you? And they're like, they don't know. And I'm like, you were there, you gave birth to her, how did you even... They said they didn't tell me what happened actually. They said, all I know is that they did live with their parents, and they didn't actually end up very well either, and I don't know if they would have ended up better if they lived with their parent. I think they would have. I think they would have done a lot better, socially speaking. Because I think at least if they lived with their actual parents, they'd be able to discern who's okay and who's not okay. Right? They'd be able to know, like, oh, this person is a good person to be with, this person's a bad person to be with. And they'd be able to be like, okay, I need to stop being friends with this person and I need to stop being friends with that person. That kind of stuff. Like, that's what I was expecting. Like, if kids... And honestly, I think the sad truth is that they said even if they lived with their actual parents and there was actual families with their legitimate blood children, they actually don't do any better than those kids. So they're like, it's actually not that big of a difference they thought, but I'm like, I think it would have been a huge difference. I think the difference would be between night and day. But I guess like because it doesn't seem like it, like me personally, but it doesn't seem like it. That's what they're saying. It doesn't seem like there's a huge difference because they're not actually doing better than other kids. And I'm like, I just feel like that's the point. Like, you just didn't want those kids to do well. It's just terrorizing the country. Again, with the British terrorizing everyone. For no fucking reason. But yeah. That's kind of... That was it. That was what I wanted to get across. Which is... I feel like... I know I sound like those, like, spooky, weird, crazy old bats on horror movies who says there's an evil entity following you, and I can see it. I feel like there's an evil entity following me. And there was a guy who saw the same thing. And I was like, I don't know who that is. It's just like, it's a woman. And have repeated nightmares of this woman. I don't know who she is. She looks like a kishin, which is a Korean word for a ghost. And it's like, she just wears a white sheet on her body to cover her body. And just black hair covering her face. I actually don't know. She has long hair. It's dark hair. And she just follows me everywhere. And she was following me on my phone. She was following me around when in another shelter. And she was following me around. Like right now I saw like a glimpse of her behind me, and I've been getting weird feelings behind my back. And she's like, her face is weird, like it just, everything is stretched out like the Joker, except like her eyes are also stretched out and there's like streaks of red in it. Everything else is just black and white with streaks of red on her face. And she, like, in my dreams, she keeps on haunting me. Like, not haunting me, she's angry. She has a grudge against me. I don't know who this is. And she has a grudge against me because of, like, this happens when things are going well for me. So when things are actually, like, me leaving and getting more and more away from people who are abusing me, who are taking advantage of me, right? And I'm me more and more doing the right thing. She pops up. She started to pop up recently. I've never had this dreams when I was a child. It's right now, like, as all these things are happening. And she follows me around everywhere. Like, not everywhere. It's like she pops up over my phone. She was tracking me on my phone. She popped up when she was just looking at me and staring at me as I was being molested. And she was angry, but she was angry because I wasn't accepting it. There was some weird stuff happening on my phone. I was like, this is fucked up. I wasn't accepting it. She kept following me around again, and there's always this entity following me around, popping up every time someone's fucking up, and it's somebody else that's fucking up, and I'm not blaming myself. I don't know if she's white or Asian. This is like a common Asian horror story ghost thing that people talk about all the time. I'm really scared. I mean, it's starting to look like paranormal activity. But yeah, she follows me around. She likes to, like, just kind of, I mean, this is the closest that she's ever gone to me. First, she was just on my phone, then she was outside of a window, and now she's just right on my back trying to, like, grasp at something. I don't know who she is. I don't know why she's following me around, and I don't know what she wants. I just know that I think she's evil, but I'm just like, yeah, I'm freaking out because I keep seeing her in my dreams, and I'm like, there's no face, because her face is always covered with, like, this hair, and she's always wearing this white garb that, like, and then now I'm just seeing it in, like, flashing images of it in person, and I'm like, this is getting freaky. I know, like, this is kind of like religious talk / like people who believe in paranormal stuff, you know, like paganism and all that kind of stuff, but I actually don't know what it is, and I don't know what she wants, and I've been trying to get rid of her for a very long time. I just know that she only pops up when things are going well. and she comes to ruin everything. Or like she tells me she has a grudge against me because something is going well. And people have been trying to tell me who it is. They're saying it's some white girl. And I'm like, I don't know who this white girl. I actually don't even know if it's a white girl. They're saying it's a woman who's been following you around everywhere. And I'm like, I don't know who she is. And I'm like, I don't know what she has anything to do with me. And they also told me, like, not they, the dreams, got people that I know in my dreams that I've met before. Some people have tried to tell me that it was Tiffany who was doing this, but I don't think it's Tiffany. I don't know who it is. It was all white women who were telling me it was Tiffany, but there were these guys who told me it was actually a white girl. And then some people were trying to tell me, no, it's actually a black girl. And I'm like, I don't know who this is. This haunting grudge entity that wants to ruin my life. Maybe it's me. It's my grudge personified. And my dreams are telling me all these grudges and deep-seated hatred that I harbor for everyone is just ruining my life. And I'm like, I don't think that's what that is. But it seems like it. It seems like that's what that is. I don't know. I don't know. It's just weird. And I didn't know this. There was a man who came by to tell me this because he didn't think I was getting it. But I did get it. And I was like freaking out. And I was freaking out because bad things were happening and it was gonna end badly. And I didn't know what to do because I couldn't really do much at the situation because people were doing bad things to me. And he came to tell me that, do you remember your pet hamster, Minnie? She wasn't actually a pet hamster. People just bred her to make her look like that. And there's other hamsters that look like that too. And you didn't kill her. She was supposed to die somewhat. It just seems like you killed her. It looked like she was gonna die anyway. But even if you had her at home and she was gonna die anyway, like honestly, there's nothing you could have done to save her. She wasn't 2 months old. So that was a fully grown hamster, and people bred her to make her look like that. And people do that all the time with hamsters. They want to make it look pretty and cute, or like they want to make it look like a something else. And unfortunately, because of the genes that code for the appearance that come with the other personality traits, it's not really what that's supposed to look like. Like physically, like it just, you can't notice it because they all look the same facial feature wise, right? Like all hamsters have the same facial feature and the same proportions, which is why it's so cute. But with them, it's like you have to have it look a certain way and it has to be a certain size. Otherwise, there's something wrong with it. And I was like, yeah, I knew there was something wrong with her. I know, I first saw her and I was like, yeah, there's something wrong with Minnie. I know that for a fact. And I knew she was crazy. And the only reason her owner gave her to me is because she was about to die. And I thought her owner didn't do something right. And he's like, kind of, yeah. I mean, she could have lived longer, I guess. But she wasn't going to live that long. She was already over 6 months old. And for that kind of particular mix or hybrid or blend, it wasn't going to last that long anyway. And I was like, ugh. And I was like, what the fuck is wrong with it? And he's like, that's the thing. People make hybrids and they mix breeds together all the time. And it doesn't work out well. And it is kind of like, it's not really a pet. It's not going to respond to you like a pet should. And it's not really like it's really not for feeding either. Like if you feed that to snakes, they're going to get very sick. So it's not for feeding, it's not for pets. It's just kind of like, it's like a hissing cockroach. It just kind of exists and you're supposed to kind of like, I mean, you can have it as a pet if you want. And I was like, I thought it was just a hamster. And he's like, it's not really a hamster. Like, that's not really what they're supposed to respond. I just knew there was something weird with Minnie, and I was like having fun with it. And I was like, oh, that's cute, I guess. And she's trying to like attack me for no reason or whatever. And I was like, I didn't know what to do, right? Because like her owner just kind of like, she gave me all this food that she was giving Minnie, and then like when I got Minnie, she wouldn't even eat it. And I was like, why won't you eat all this food? Like, she even packed it so nicely for you. And she's like, I don't want to eat it. I was like, okay, I gave her human food. She liked that one better, but like she wouldn't eat any of the hamster food. They're actually supposed to eat like some insects, such as like mealworms and stuff. She wouldn't even eat any of the mealworms, and I thought that I don't want to put something in it. She didn't, and she had this really nasty smell when I first got her. Like it smelled like death. Like it smelled like she died and her internal organs were rotting when I first got her. And I was like, I don't know what that smell is. I don't know why you smell like that. That's what that was, and I was like really shocked. You know what I mean? And I was like, what the fuck is that shit? But I knew there was a girl, and she had this hamster when she was younger, and they're saying that's exactly what her hamster was. Except like yours is like the quarter of a size of that hamster. Your hamster was quarter of a size of that hamster, and different fur, didn't look similar, and they're exactly the same, and they died the exact same way. And it looked like you shook her up and she died because she didn't have enough food or whatever. But that's not what happened, because he did the exact same thing when he died, and he was in a cage, and we were feeding him, and he was drinking his water every day, and he was in a house. And I was like, you know, the only thing that we both had in common, like as owners for the hamster, was that we both were from a low income bracket. That's it. And I'm like, does that have anything to do with it? And he's like, that actually has nothing to do with it. It seems like that. With dogs, it is like that. Because of certain breeds, they'll actually die that way because of that kind of stress. But with hamsters, it's not actually like that. It's actually like, it's just kind of weird. And I was like, what? And then I was like, why would anybody want that as like a pet or anything? And he's like, some people just like it as a pet. And I'm like, that's pretty crazy. But yeah, he's like, people are like that too. And he's like trying to tell me like, not a racial thing, but it's like, okay, so like, you know how people like sometimes you're not supposed to have babies with certain people because like kind of like that kind of breeding practices. Yeah, people are like that too, where they're not really supposed to have babies with each other because their child's gonna be like a offspring of a Satan and a fucking minotaur. It's just not gonna look well. It's not gonna do anything. There's no point of it, right? Oh, they're just talking about a rapist. Oh my god. Is that, yeah, the minotaur stuff. Okay, so it's a half man, half bull. So it's like the guy's a rapist and he patrols this maze, right? And apparently, I don't know what the point of that maze is, but apparently if people enter that maze and they encounter that bull, they're gonna die because that guy's gonna rape them to death or something like that. I was like, what was the point of the maze again? I'm gonna Google it later. I think they were protecting a treasure. No, there was no treasure. You're not even supposed to be there. It's just a maze and there's a minotaur and he's gonna rape you and you die. That's a Greek myth or whatever, but yeah, that's what that is. And I was like, oh my god. But yeah, he's like, people are like that. Oh, some people, they're not supposed to have babies with each other, but they do, like incest babies. Like, but except it's not incest. It's just what people are not supposed to be with. And like when they have kids together, their kids are like that. Like there's really no point of them even being alive. They're creepy, they're gross, and everyone just hates them. And it's nothing to do with discrimination. And I was like, oh my god. Which is something I've personally faced. And I hate it. And I get it. I get where it's coming from. Which is like, whatever. I just call it ignorance because that's what that is. But he's like, yeah, there's people that are like that. Like, they're just so creepy. There's no point of them being alive. And it's because their parents weren't thinking it through. Or sometimes their parents did it as a sick joke to see how badly their child's life's gonna go. I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, they're not gonna be around to see the child. They're not planning on making sure the child's okay. They just think it's funny. And it's a way for them to get to know the neighborhood people and see what their child can get up to. And I'm like, why they even bother having a kid? And they're like, because that's the only reason they were together. To have a fucked up kid, to watch them do that fucked up shit and fail and like just laugh at them behind their back. I'm like, look, I'm getting crazy eyes because of it. Crazy eye. I'm like, oh my god. And they're like, yeah, people aren't as nice as you think they are. And I'm like, I never thought they were that nice, but I didn't think they would do that because it's fucked up. It's gonna cost people money, and they're like, yeah, well, guess who doesn't really care? Because other people are too busy doing their own thing. They never really notice, especially if they're from a lower income bracket. I'm like, so they're just hiding there? And he's like, basically. And I'm like, the fuck? And he's like, yeah, it's really nothing you can do. And I'm like, that's weird. And he's like, it definitely is. And he also told me that a lot of people were like doing things to get in other people's way by like supporting people like that, those creepy, weird cockroach-like people. And the reason for it was that they were rejected by their income and their immediate social group, and they've been having a hard time meeting other people because they don't speak another language. And it's hard to learn a language at that point and to be able to make friends at that point without being taken advantage of. Right? Like, some people are going to try to befriend them or try to teach them a language, and they're going to end up getting scammed, or they're going to use that as an opportunity to attack them or whatever. And they're supposed to go through it that way, but they don't want to, because it's not the best way. It's like living on the streets. So he's like, he didn't want to go through that way, so he actually was supporting people like that because it's still socializing. It's still people who are around that still like him and still talk to him. And he's like, if I didn't have that, I'd be on a lot of drugs, and I'd be on heroin because people reject me all the time. Nobody even wants to put up with me. So I need somebody to talk to because otherwise I'd go crazy. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, that's what that is. That's why people do that kind of stuff, because they don't want to end up on heroin, they don't want to get sold off to some idiot, or they don't want to leave themselves completely exposed. So they want to know, when they stop talking to other people and they stop having people to relate to or whatever, they end up going crazy. Yeah, he's like, once you go crazy, you lose everything. And by the time, you regain your senses, by that time, it's too late. You've already lost everything. You've already fucked up every relationship you could have possibly been with. And, no one wants to put up with you anymore. People are just waiting for you to die. And no one even talks to you. No one wants to help you out. Nobody even notices that you're starving and bleeding on the streets. They just ignore you. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, thank God here, people actually pay for healthcare, so people don't see that on the street. They don't want to look at that. So they have workers who come by and clean that up, but in other places, they don't. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, if you were on the streets, even if you beg people for money, even if you stole from stores, they still just ignore you. And I'm like, is that why people are doing that? He's like, no, here they're not actually doing that to get attention, so they're not completely ignored by everybody. And he's like, this is why it's a lot better here, which is why they prefer it here, because they do that out of need, because they're actually starving. Or because they think it's a want, right? It's either that person is starving, or they're forced to do it, or it's because they really, really want it. Okay, it's not because they're getting desperate and they want somebody to blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, it seems like they're getting desperate now. And he's like, it's getting bad now. It wasn't like this before. And I'm like, maybe it was bad because you started doing that kind of stuff. And he's like, isn't that a sign? And I was like, that's what I thought. I was like, it's probably a sign that if you need to resort to talking to people like that to have a social life, I don't know, it's probably not the best way to go about doing things. I don't know, I feel like your social life was over. And he's like, you don't know what it's like because you think I'm really bad right now, but there's people who are worse than me, and their social life was over, and trust me, they came from very wealthy backgrounds. And I was like, yeah, and I was like, what? Why are they like that? And he's like, just watch when somebody's social life degrades and it's completely over. You don't know what it's like. And I was like, why would their social life be over? And he's like, because they alienate themselves from everyone around them, and anytime someone tries to be nice to them or play with them or get at them or whatever, they just reject them and they start physically attacking them. And I'm like, yeah, that's called schizophrenia. And he's like, kind of, but not really. Some people, they get like that because they don't have a social life, and they don't have a social life for a good reason, which is they've done something terrible in their life and no one's willing to forgive them. And I was like, okay, but why are they still alive? And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, no, it's worse than that. I thought my foster mother was bad enough. He's like, no, it gets worse. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, it gets really, really bad. Like, you have no idea. Some of the people that live on the streets, which is what they were trying to prevent you from seeing, who don't have access to any of this because they already fucked up at the shelters, like, to the extent where they can't even go back, and everyone, if they saw anybody there, they would literally punch them. And they wouldn't, like, they would be whatever, like, it is kind of like they can't even go there and pick up food there kind of stuff because they fucked them over. Or like, no, I don't know what he said. He made it seem like that's what I was doing. I was fucking them over, but they fucked themselves over. But he's like, yeah, people, like, not like you, but like there's people who are in the same situation, which is what they're trying to force you to be in, right? With absolutely nothing and no social life. Nobody wants to talk to them. Even if you run out of money, nobody wants to feed you. And they're gonna have to feed you out of obligation, and you can't even go there without getting robbed or being punched or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I already been there. Like, I was at Sister and they were trying to like infect me with HIV needles and stuff. And he's like, no, it gets worse than that. And I was like, what do you mean? It's like, you have to live in a dumpster. Like, that's how bad it is. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, like, it's just kind of like, you are still able to socialize, and there's people who are willing to notice you, and there's people who owe you money. And they fucked up. That's enough for you to be able to get by. But those people, they actually have nothing to go by, and they have no reason to be involved in society, and nobody wants to put up with them because they fucked up so significantly, and they thought doing all that work to make amends for it was gonna change things. Like, they thought it would change everything. They're like, as long as I work and pay off people and like apologize and be really good, I'll still have a chance. And there will be people who accept me, and they're like, they don't. That's the truth. Is that people just ignore them after they get what they need. And I was like, what happens to the people? Like, well, kind of like they go crazy. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, no, you wouldn't even be able to tell because they look normal. But every time they open their mouth, and the things that shit they choose to do is insane. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, the way they go about doing things, like, there was a guy on the bus I saw, he looked completely normal except his expression and his body posture. He was like hunched over like this and muttering all these swear words at me for no reason, even though I don't know the man. And he had a jug of water, but I'm like, you were wearing very nice clothes, you can afford to get a water bottle or something. Why are you having an old milk jug that you've been carrying around for like a month to drink water out of? And he was like saying all this bad stuff about me, which like was untrue, and I didn't even know the guy. And he's like, that's what that's like you don't understand it because I'm like, I don't accept it. And he's like, yeah, but you're right directly beside them. But if you didn't know them and you saw them do those kind of things, you would think they're crazy. I'm like, yeah, I saw that guy on the bus, I thought he was insane. I'm like, clear that's a homeless weirdo. And he's like, yeah, but he's not homeless. I'm like, yeah, clearly, because he lives in a home, that's why he's so well taken care of, right? And he's like, yeah, there's people like that at every income level. And I'm like, seriously? He's like, yeah. And I'm how they, like, their families literally hide them away. And I'm like, what? And they're like, they never get better, even if they pay them back or reimburse them or whatever. And I'm like, that's crazy. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I saw people like that too, like, I lived with them. And he's like, no, they weren't actually that bad when you were living with them. They got worse. And I was like, and he's like, yeah, that's what they look like in public, so they don't actually go out in public. And I was like, really? And I was like, he's like, yeah. And he's like, that's what the shelters are like for. Like, they don't want these people roaming around in public. And I was like, but some of them don't even look that different from people. And he's like, yeah, those people, they don't stay in the shelters. They actually, I don't think they're on and off renters or something. And I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, that's what I would assume. And I'm like, so though another woman told me something different. She told me that they actually don't ever leave the shelters. It's kind of like a group home for people who have no money and no ability to get a job and who's chronically disabled or something. And he's like, that's not what that is. And I'm like, what? And he's like, no, that place is for refugees and people who fucked up so significantly in life. In Canada, there's no life imprisonment, I think. I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, because they cut the budget. And it's like, yeah, there's no capital punishment. So even if you do something terrible, and even if they don't have evidence for all of it, and they only convict you off of a minor offense, yes, no one still wants to be around you because you can still tell. And then they end up there, and they can't find a job, or then, like, how are they getting money? It's like, they don't really, they just stay there, just kind of lifeless, and just kind of do weird stuff, and I'm like, this seems kind of cruel. And he's like, I don't fucking know. And I'm like, yeah, I support them, I talk to them, all that kind of stuff. I consider them to be, like, a big part of my life, but if I didn't, then I'd be on heroin and probably broke within a month, and, you know, losing all my teeth and whoring myself up for money, which would ruin me indefinitely, and I wouldn't even be able to pay my bills, and I'd be on the streets. And I'm like, are there people like that on the streets? He's like, you don't even know what it's like in this city. There's a lot of people, and I just realized this, all the people who are making a significant amount of money left. I think they found out what they were doing in the city, and they're like, they couldn't put up with it anymore, and plus all their money was being drained, so they just left the city. Left the country, I mean, not just city, they left the country. After getting all their stuff together, they just left. And I think that's been happening to a lot of places, and I think that's why people are like, yeah, you can go to America, you can make a lot of money, and you can bring it back home, or you can kind of flex on all your people who hated you. And I'm like, yeah, that's not what that is. And it's like, you know how hard it is to get by here? And I just got why they called it the land of the free, because I think this is specifically American thing, where they don't actually follow by any rules. Like, there's no rules here by the American culture. As in, like, not their culture, but I don't know. I think that's their culture. It's not really a culture, is it? They don't actually go by any rules. There's no rules. Like, there's no actual, like, set standards or, like, a little borderline or whatever. That's not what they do. But the problem is that a lot of people who wanted to live there or needed to live there, they can't actually just live without knowing the rules. Somebody has to tell them. Like, so obviously people have to tell people something, right? Information exchange is a huge part of human life. But, like, as I said, like, there's actually, like, people just know it innately, or it's kind of like, I don't know what to say. Like, in Korea, there's rules, and it's written down, and people know what it is, right? And nobody really argues about it because everyone pretty much agrees on it. And if there's some sort of disagreement, then they figure it out themselves or something. Here, there's not really that many rules at all. There are rules. Trust me, there's rules, but there's no rules. Like, it's kind of like, oh, you can make your eggs whichever way you want. You know, there's no wrong answer. And I'm like, there's a wrong way to make eggs if it's burnt. But they're like, no. If you like it burnt, then just eat it burnt. That's apparently American or something. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah. If that's how you want to make your eggs, and that's the kind of eggs you like, then you can burn it as much as you want. And I'm like, but that's nasty. They're like, some people like it that way. And I'm like, seriously? I'm like, what? And it's like, yeah, that's kind of like the thing here. They're like, there's rules, obviously, but it's not really like rules that other people don't know, and it's kind of really obvious. And also, so you can do whatever way you do, but just don't hurt other people. Like, if you get in other people's way, they're gonna get really offended and really pissed, and you don't want people to be pissed. Like, if you piss them off, they're gonna do something bad, and the only reason they'd be pissed is if you overstep your boundary. But they're kind of okay with that kind of stuff if you have a relationship and you guys are kind of like that. And I'm like, okay, but like, this is, like, they don't write down the rules, basically. Like, it's just kind of something like, they're like, yeah, I don't know, I guess that's kind of what that is, whatever. I'm like, I don't get it. they're like, the rule is that you can have rules, but if you stop working with those rules, and it goes back to what it was before, which is, why would it's, I feel like that's like that everywhere, and they're like, not really. Like, if somebody stopped going by Korean rules in Korea, it's still Korea. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what that is. But if somebody stopped going by American rules here, it wouldn't be America anymore. It'd be just an empty plot of land. I'm like, I don't get it. It's kind of like, maybe that's where the phrase, if you don't use it, you lose it, comes from. I don't know. So they're like, okay, so like, if you like stop, like, it's like supporting a business, right? Like, if you stop supporting the local business and they don't make any money, then they're not gonna be a business anymore. And I'm like, that's true. And he's like, it's like that. And it's like, oh, but it's like that everyone. He's like, no, in some countries the businesses, they don't stay open for the rest of its country's openings. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, some people don't ever let it die because they get bailouts, and that's not really American. And I'm like, yeah, it's like, yeah, people actually actively support the business if they know it's failing. They come together and they're like, yeah, you need a little bit of an extra lift or whatever. And he's like, that's very un-American. That's not very American at all. And he's like, I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah. He's like, if you see a failing business, just let it be, because that's the natural progression of that business. Like, people just stop supporting it for whatever reason, and this is the way it is. And I'm like, does that happen in other countries? Like, not really. Like, you'd be very surprised. You're very supportive of each other with that kind of stuff, with monetary transactions. It's not like that here. And I'm like, maybe that's why their finances did so well. Like, their business economics was like such a huge impact, and people were able to, like, people who usually would never be able to be in the same room together were able to work with each other. And he's like, yeah, it's pretty hard to live here. If you like rules and you like support and you like people following the rules and being nice to each other all the time, that's not really very American. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, just look at the landscape. I'm like, what? You got so really sweet maple syrup, and you got the nice fruits like the bananas and the avocados, which are so high and fat and it tastes so good, and I don't even need to like cook anything with it. Like, it's already seasoned. And he's like, yeah, that's kind of what it's like here. You don't really. I'm like, you could say that with any. No, actually, that's not true. Yeah, it's like, you don't really need to cook it. You don't really season it. It's kind of how it is. It's natural. And I was like, really? Oh, they have salmon here too, but nobody ever talks about that. And some birds and such. And whales, yeah, the ones that live really up north, they eat whales. I actually don't know what it tastes like, but they eat whales. And I was like, what? Apparently for natives, when they do really bad, or if they do something wrong, they end up with the white people, and they end up at the shelters. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, they can't actually be with a woman, which means that they're married, and if they can't financially support that woman, then they might actually die, because it's not in them to do that. But they typically pair up with another dude, because it's not, like, they can't have sex with her, and there's no way that he can be near her without having sex with her if they're a couple. And also, because of it, like, there's, like, I'm like, yeah, this is what they do. They're like, if they do something bad, or there's something wrong with them, and they're, like, taking advantage of other people, they kick them out, and then they make them live in the homeless shelters, or, like, with other white people, and they're like, that's their punishment, is living with white people. And I was like, what? And I was like, yeah, that's the native people punishment. So you have to live with the white people now and go by their culture, customs, and you gotta live off what they're doing, which is the homeless shelter stuff. I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, that's what that is. And I was like, that's weird. And it's like, no, it's like they fucked up, so they don't get to live with us, so they have to live with the white people. I'm like, it's still your land. Don't they need to be kicked out of your land? He's like, oh, I don't fucking know. There's some white people here. And I'm like, can you kick them out? And they're like, I guess. And I'm like, I feel like they should have kicked them out a while ago. I mean, they cause problems for everyone. That's a story for another day. This video is like over an hour now. And my PC is still resetting. And I'm like, oh, I'm so bored. And I gotta go for a cigarette soon. And I don't know. I'm really hungry. All I have is candy. And yeah, he's like, you know what? Like, you think you have it bad, but these people actually had it really good and they ended up there. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I met a, and they're like, yeah, they weren't. And I'm like, yeah, there's a guy who went through the same thing as me where he just got kicked out. And he's like, yeah, because he did something wrong. But I'm like, I didn't do anything wrong, but I still got kicked out. And we're not really from that big different of a place. And he's like, but why do you think you're doing a lot better than he is? And why do you think he's responding that way? But I'm like, I have nothing to do with that. Like, he shouldn't be responding that way. And they're like, you're right, but that's why, because there's something wrong, or he did something wrong, and he kind of understands that, but he sees you from the same place. You didn't actually do anything wrong, and you're still at the same place, and he knows you can get out of it because you didn't do anything wrong, and there's a way for you to still continue living, and he can't. That's his life now. And he hates you for it because he could have been his life if he didn't do the wrong thing. And I'm like, can you just make up for it and like just apologize? And he's like, he can't. And they're like, no, he can't, because he did something wrong. It's something he can't really take back or like make amends for. And I'm like, it's not right. He's like, yeah, no, it's really not. And I'm like, can I leave this country now? Like, I don't want to live here. I want to go back home. I want to go back to Korea. And they're like, you know what? I know the reason is that it's gonna be worse for you if you go to Korea without any money. And not that they don't care about their citizens. Like, I don't think that's it. But they're like, they don't have the government subsidies or support that they have here. Even though they're gonna cut that out soon too. Like, that's kind of what they've been trying to tell me. They're like, you need to wake up. Like, these people aren't gonna support you, like, financially because they don't have any money. And the reason why they're cutting corners is because they don't have any money. And it just makes it seem like they're doing it to hurt you, and you want to hate yourself, and you want to blame yourself, and you think that they're actively against you, and blah, blah, blah. The truth is, they can't really afford it. That's what they're saying. They're like, you're not gonna be able to afford all the budgeting and all that kind of stuff. It's gonna be really hard to get by. And I'm like, but what? And he's like, you and then they're like, not only that, but like, I know that personally, if I was homeless in Korea, somebody would have killed me by now. I know that sounds crazy, and that person would have gone to jail for it, and their life would have been ruined, and other people would be affected, but they wouldn't have left me alone. Like, I fall asleep, all my stuff would have been gone. Like, I wouldn't be able to sleep once. And the difference here is that they have drop-in centers for food. They don't have that in Korea. Like, I literally have to be begging on the streets because and the thing is, it only gets to that point after the authorities have been contacted, and they contacted other family members and the neighbors, and everyone else has talked to them, and they see me, and they kind of figure out what's going on. And if they did something wrong, then they're the ones who get in trouble, and they're the ones who have to support me. If I did something wrong, then I'm the one who has to live on the streets. That kind of stuff. And it seems like that's kind of East Asian culture, like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, that's kind of what's like there. And it's not like that in America. Like, apparently they say that's very un-American, and I'm like, that's kind of like what's like in East Asia, where there's a lot more people and there's a lot more competition and the kind of stuff. Like, that's how they weed out, or how do they decide like if things are okay or not okay, you know. I'm like, sometimes people make mistakes, sometimes people lie, sometimes a lot of people get involved in lies, so that's why they do that. They're like, and I was wondering, what would they do if the white people weren't here and that guy have to be kicked out? And he's like, or he's something wrong, and he's like, well, what would they have done? I actually don't know. I was theorizing in Africa, like, the only reason, because like they live in towns, But like the thing in Africa is that they have really dangerous animals that live there. Like the wildlife is dangerous in Africa, whereas the wildlife in America is very docile. And there's no dangerous wildlife in the east, except for in the jungles and the woods, but that's so far away from civilization, the main towns and stuff, that rarely anybody really goes there unless you actually have a house there or the monks go there. Those are the only types of people that live in the really wooded area with dangerous animals are monks and people who have a house there in the woods away from other people for whatever reason. Typically farmers. Not the rice paddy farmers, like just people who farm and live off the land, and monks, but majority of them are monks. Their temples up there, or they say that they're monks. They dress in monk garbs. They even have a temple set up and everything. Yeah, they have like public washrooms and they offer meals to people who come by. Oh, like they made from their own vegetable garden in the temple areas. Yeah. Maybe that's like their homeless shelters in Korea or something. I don't fucking know. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't lived there that long. I gotta be honest. It took me out when I was a child, and I was like, no, I'm gonna stay here. They got melons and tropical weather. I got to experience monsoon and snowfall. It's amazing. They're like, no, you're gonna live in a fucking shithole. This is nothing but dirt and ragweed. You're gonna be allergic 90% of the time, and the other 10% you're gonna freeze your ass off. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. I'm like, why am I being punished for your crimes? It's like being on crack. And someone else is being punished for their crimes, just being called being on crack.
Please do your best to stay at least 2 meters.
Yeah, I gotta wash my teeth. What else? Yeah. The word, like, there's clearly wooded areas. It's dark. It's dangerous. You don't know what's lurking on the corner. Like, why would you even go there? Whereas, like, in the Africas, I just thought about it. It's literally, there's groups of animals hunting each other down. And I think, like, if you get kicked out of the town, or, like, no one's willing to accept you, or, like, for whatever reason, they, like, knock you out in the middle of the night, and then it just puts you out away from the town. I think that, like, because there's like so much animals, like even if you find your way back, obviously it's like, okay, like, are you not gonna get killed by a group of lions or trampled by elephants trying to drink some water, or like, you know, like a pack of wild dogs or hyenas, or and there's snakes everywhere. Literally, like, all their snakes and all their arthropods are dangerous and venomous and poisonous. You can't even eat them. I mean, I know in the jungle, like in the American jungles, there's like these tarantulas. You can roast it and eat it. I saw a video of people doing that, and I think they were making fun of those guys actually. Like, you're like, these tarantulas, they're not really harmful if you know how to roast it, and you take out the hairs and you can eat it. And they actually ate it, and I was like, but anyway, they're like, yeah, but except in there, they're like, they will kill you and you can't eat it because the entire thing has poison in it. And I was like, oh, do not eat. And then also, like, there's snakes there in the savannas because there's a lot of desert land, okay? You can't see them because they're in the sand, and in the desert there's literally no water, no food, no nothing for miles, and the only thing there are cacti, which might hurt you if you're like starving and thirsty, and you can't really be careful at that point. So most likely you're gonna hurt yourself, and then you're trying to drink some water, hurting yourself or whatever. And then there's these little lizards everywhere. There's Komodo dragons, I think, there. Also, if you go by a river, there are hippos who will kill you. Even though they're herbivores. They'll just literally trample all over you because you went near the river. Or whatever. Yeah. They're wild animals. People don't take that seriously. I'm like, no, these guys will attack if you encroach their territory. But that's like with people too. Except it's not as territorial and as simple as animals. And there's crocodiles in the river. And there's water snakes. And there's venomous vipers and the sand snakes and all that kind of stuff. And there's birds. They're huge. They're usually carnivores. And there's like they drop things from the height. And they eat other little animals and stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to like survive in the wildlife without anyone else watching your back. in Africa, I'm assuming. In Korea, there's stuff like that, but not really. It's just hard to be around other people because they'll kill you. And they consider what people consider dangerous here to be just stupid. So they're not really taking them seriously because they're not really serious. Like, it really don't matter if you kill them or not, right? Like, there's a kill ones and no kills ones. Don't kill. Don't kill. If you kill that one, you're gonna get shit. If you don't kill that one, you're gonna get shit. If you can kill that one, you can't kill that one. That's it. I mean, it's not really Chinese. Chinese people don't like this. This is really, for the racists, it gets really confusing. Chinese people like to have people alive and in their group, even if they don't like them. That's how they're saying it, but they don't like to have people die. And I said this before, it's because they're more beneficial if they turn their life around and they'll actually support the economy. But they don't always do that, and sometimes it looks better if you're including even the sick ones amongst themselves. Even if they're sick and dying, it's better to take care of the sick and dying than just to leave them out. It's kind of cruel at that point, and it can bother other people. So that's why they don't do that, because it's somebody's responsibility, as in it's somebody's family member. You should be looking after your own family member at the very least. It's not just about yourself, other people live here too. That kind of stuff. That's very Chinese. That's what they're like. I mean, people get confused because they're like, oh, I thought you were Chinese, how come you don't give a shit? It's like, because I'm Korean. Okay? Korean people don't care unless there's something that's actually, somebody's not doing something and it's affecting other people. Right? It's like, why is this person on the streets and begging me for money? Why is this person stealing from my store because they can't eat? Who is your family and why are you here? I'll fucking kill you or your family. Now, I'm not losing profit over this. It's kind of, yeah, that's more Korean than it is Chinese. Yeah, the Chinese, they're actually more like, okay, it's fine. We just need to find out how you cannot affect us like this. You don't have to go back to your family if you don't want to, but I think you should be doing something else. Like, I'm pretty sure there's I don't know, like, maybe we can put you up for a bit or something like that. We'll find somebody to help you relocate your family members. You know, we can't just have you sleeping and doing this kind of stuff. And then the next thing you know, your organs are all gone. Yeah, that's what that's like. Yeah, but they don't like to get rid of their sick and dying or like the useless ones. They like to keep all of it, even though they're not supposed to. And then like they start stealing and stuff. Yeah, it's just, it looks nice and it is good, but it's not. Like, in a way it's good, but it's not actually good. Yeah, that's Chinese, and they get confused. These white people, they're like, oh, Japan is even worse with the whole thing. They're like, the mentally ill are considered criminals in Japan, and they don't distinguish. This is the Western concept, okay, with the Greek philosophies, with the mental illnesses. In Japan, they don't actually go by that. In Japan, it's just called a criminal. They don't say that this person is sick and they need to get better or healthier. They say this is just what that's like. They're criminals. And they're like, what they do with the criminals is that they just kind of leave them. They're social rejects, so nobody talks to them. Even if they talk to them, they're not even looking at them. That kind of stuff. Like, they just kind of like, they're off to the side. No one really cares about them. They can't find a job, and like, they're the crazy people who attempt to go back to society and they get beat to shit and they go back outside. That kind of stuff. That's a criminal. They have no way to find a job. They don't actually have connection to their family anymore. All that kind of stuff. That's what that's like. If you are asking me why is it like that in Japan, I think that's where they got that whole concept of copying from, where like that's how they're doing their thing. I think these white people get their concept of copying stuff. But like, yeah, they kill people in Japan. It doesn't look like they're being killed, but they're like, it's kind of weird. Whatever. They like, apparently in America they say we don't really kill them. They just kind of die. And I'm like, are you sure? But that's what they said. They said they just died. It's like out of natural causes because people can't live that long. And they're like, I'm like, right. What can you say about that? But yeah, in Japan they kill them, kind of. Like they can't, like criminals actually can't work. They think yakuzas are criminals. They're not. They're actually not the word for police. They get bad people to work as police officers, which is what they do in every country. Except with them, they're actually like, they're not keeping things in line. Like they have that for immigrants or people who actually can't understand why things are happening to them, such as criminals. So you just call them up and they're like, get the fuck back there. And why do they respond to those people? I don't fucking know. But yeah, they're scary. They're scary people. Not dangerous, scary. Like, dangerous people are people who don't know what they're doing and they like to hurt people for no reason. Those are dangerous people. You're nice to them, they'll just stab you. Like, literally. Like, that's a dangerous person. And they don't respond to anything. Like, they just do whatever the fuck they want, which is called a criminal in Korea. Those people they consider dangerous because they're stupid. They're like, they're not actually gonna hurt anyone. They don't have the skills to, okay? They're not really mentally stable, nor are they very physically healthy or mentally healthy. But in Japan, that's not called a criminal. They call mentally ill people criminals, like people who have significant mental health or addiction issues. And they like to kind of, I don't know what they do there actually. I've never lived in Japan, but like I think they just like leave them out to die. Or like they get passed around from fucked up person to fucked up person until like somebody finally does away with them. Yeah. You think internalized racism is bad? You should be seeing what the white people have been doing to themselves, and I didn't know this, but it was actually what a lot of people were rooting for. They were laughing, honestly. They're like, yo, these guys are so fucked. Like, every generation of white person is inbred. And that's what the white supremacists were doing. And they're like, they're so stupid that they didn't know that's what they were supporting. And I'm like, the only reason they get any support is because Chinese are like that too. But not all Chinese people are inbred. But with white supremacists, all of them are inbred. And all white person is inbred in some way in one generation. And maybe it's very far down the road. Maybe it's very immediate. But there is an inbred person in their genealogy at one point in their life. And I'm like, that's bad. And they're like, yeah, that's why they're like that. And I was like, but yeah, that's where pedophilia comes from, apparently. Yeah, that's a criminal in Japan. That's why I'm having a hard time being able to assess these people, because I'm like, that's just like, that's not even what that is, because not everybody goes by the Western standards. Specifically in America, you should be going by American standards. Right? This isn't Europe. I mean, it would make sense in Europe, but it doesn't make sense here, which is probably why a lot of people went crazy. They're like, I don't know what to go by. Like, what the fuck am I? And I'm like, did you get accepted and did you assimilate to the native culture here? Then you're still just a fugitive / immigrant / refugee. Like, immigrant is somebody who assimilated to a different person's culture, but is from a different ethnic background. That's an immigrant. They face a lot of discrimination for whatever reason, right? A fugitive is somebody who ran away and is under no legal protection in a different country, but has not lost their legal status in a different country, or has lost their legal status in their own country and now is looking to gain legal status again. That's still a fugitive. Oh, they revoked their citizenships in Korea. That's what the difference was. They don't do that in China, I think. And I don't think they do that in the USA. I think it's really hard to get your citizenship revoked. I think they just rather kill them off than revoke their citizenship. I think that's what that is. Like, once you're Chinese, right? That kind of stuff. And I'm like, I don't know if that's right. But yes, citizen revocation happens all the time. Another thing. Now it's on an hour and a half. How am I talking for so long? Okay, there's another thing that people don't understand, which is, like, the thing is, I think, like, it's something's weird. I thought there was aliens involved. There might not actually be aliens involved, but apparently some people were like, I mean, it's called taking advantage of somebody, but if you take advantage of a bad person, it's not that bad, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I mean, it's kind of whole ethical debate there. I don't really want to get into that. But yeah, it's like, what that's like. I didn't know how bad it was in Korea until they told me. And I'm like, why are you so okay? And I'm like, what are you talking about? You guys are like, I mean, you guys are doing something illegal, so you're gonna get in trouble. But like, I don't know, you seem like I should be shocked. And they're like, if you were a white person, you would have been like in the hospital by now. Like, you would have been like traumatized and you've been doing fucked up shit, or you've been like getting addicted to drugs already. And I'm like, from what? And he's like, from people doing that kind of stuff to you. And I'm like, but that wasn't my fault. And he's like, yeah. And apparently they don't understand that part. I'm like, what? And like, I know, like, I realized this when I was in the, like, I hate that fucking place. I want that place to burn to fucking hell, burn to the ground. But yeah, apparently a lot of people are criminals in Korea. Ish. Like, I didn't know it was that bad of a place to live in, but I'm like, that's so good. It's great there. What are you guys talking about? And they're like, no, that place is dangerous and scary. And I was like, how? And they're like, because people die. And I'm like, but people die every day. And they're like, nobody wants to help each other. And I'm like, they do help each other. And they're like, no, like, they just kind of leave them to die, or like always try to like whatever. And I'm like, you don't make any sense. But I think they're trying to say, like, it's kind of like living on the streets with like wealth stuff associated, and people just kind of leave each other alone and kind of stuff. And I'm like, not really. And I guess to them it's scary, because they're like, if I do something bad, you mean it's just the entire neighborhood is gonna hate me for it? People are gonna know? I'm like, people can tell. They're not stupid. And they have their own opinions. So, like, if that person doesn't support what you did, then you're gonna get shit from them. If the person doesn't care, then they're gonna care. But if you do something that everyone agrees is stupid, like having sex with your family member, then you're gonna be ostracized. And everyone can tell. They can read. And they're like, no, people here can't tell because they can't read. And I'm like, okay, but if you go to any other country that with people who have literature abilities, like, they can read that, and they're like, they'll make fun of you. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah. What do you think? Like, what, you think you're gonna do stupid shit and people can't tell? And like, you're like acting surprised, and they're saying it's discrimination when you completely forgot what you did out of your own free choice. Like, people can't tell already. It's kind of weird. But yeah, I'm like, apparently it's like, it's dangerous. Like, there's a lot of criminals there, and I'm like, I don't think they're criminals. Like, because you guys are criminals. You guys are stupid. Like, it's not like you're just down or crazy. You picked up a few skills here and there and think you're hot shit. And I'm like, yeah, it's fucked up. It's retarded. And they're like, no, like, people are scared of people like that. I'm like, what's so scary about these idiots? What, you send them to prison, you go, once their life is over, they're fucking fugitive. You got nothing. Literally, like, they got, honestly, they're like not even protected by anyone. They don't even have any friends, and nobody even understands that because they're crazy. It's hilarious. And they're like, no, people don't see it that way here. And I'm like, what are you talking about? How else do you see it? And they're like, they didn't know that, like, it's not like that everywhere or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Anyway, you guys are being really nice, you know that? Like, all these taxes paying for all these people who are awful, by the way, and highly unlikable and unpleasant. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, how are you guys paying for this? And they're like, just tax money. And I'm like, okay, so where's all the people who are paying taxes over this? And they're like, they left. And I'm like, okay, so how are we going to keep this place running? And they're like, we're just gonna, it's essential. And I'm like, it's not really essential, honestly. But anyway, I've been trying my best to a lot of people came to America because they thought they struck it rich. I'm getting embarrassed about what they're saying and doing. I'm like, yeah, okay. Foster mom's supposed to drop off $1,000. She hasn't done so yet. Wondering when she's gonna get to it. Hoping that she gets to do soon.